Yeah, my reaction is I really hope my wife is not watching that introduction. Thank you, Markie. Look, we saw it last night. We were talking about it here before the show. There was signs of some weakness early. Kamala Harris was underperforming statewide Democrats in a variety of states. Virginia, Ohio, most notably North Carolina. There are down-ballot Democrats this morning in North Carolina who would have beaten Donald Trump yesterday. We talked yesterday on the show about whether or not Kamala Harris was reaching out to Republicans who have always voted Republican, and she needed them to vote Democrat. They didn't do that. She only got them halfway. She got them not to vote for Donald Trump, but she didn't get them to vote for her. And that was the margin in just about every single one of the swing states, and in fact, other states. She won Virginia by 5 points. Joe Biden won that state by 10 or 12 4 years ago.
Brad, we had here on the show yesterday the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, and I asked both the RNC head and the DNC head, essentially, why are you bullish about your chances going forward? Here's what Jamie Harrison said. We knocked on 2,000 doors a minute. 2,000 doors a minute. The RNC ground game in Pennsylvania is pathetic. And you got to wonder, Brad, did this have nothing to do with the ground game? And did it instead have to do with the candidates on both sides?
I'm actually concerned what the numbers would look like if we didn't have a ground game, because I think it would have been a much worse night for Democrats across the country, and I think we would have for sure have lost the House. I think the ground game, helped stem some of that tide last night. But I think to your point, in regards to when you go after low propensity voters, you think these are voters that don't often vote, but they're definitely going to vote for you. So how do you get them out to vote? If you don't have a ground game, you do what Trump did over the last 2 years. You give them a reason to vote. You fire them up. You focus on cultural issues. You tell them how the deck is stacked against you, and I'm going to fight for you. They, them, I'm with you. That type of stuff resonated and motivated a base that really didn't need a ground game, it turns out.
Denise, let me also piggyback off of that and just kind of where the Democratic Party goes from here. Our colleague Chris Stirewalt last night was saying that, and early this morning, really, there's now going to be this civil war playing out within the Democratic Party. A lot of finger pointing. What are we doing wrong? Policy, people. Where do they go from here? What are we about to see?
Well, there's going to be this tug of war within the Democratic Party. One side is going to say she didn't go far enough left. And the other's going to say, look at where the trends are, because everyone's talking about how things shift to the right. And I understand why it looks like that. But I think if you really look at what happened, it wasn't so much that the populists went to the right. I think that the right stayed in common sense. Trump just had to stand there. The Democrats chose the second most progressive senator as the top of their ticket with an even more progressive governor. Nobody wanted the things. The majority of Americans didn't want the things that she and Walz stood for. And so I think that's really where they missed the mark as Democrats. And I think Brad, as a blue dog, understands this better than most. But if they start listening to people like Brad and start seeing that actually gave Trump a lot of room to moderate, because they went so far to the left that Trump was able to take things off the plate that have been traditional conservative values like abortion. That issue he was able to moderate on because they gave him so much wiggle room. And honestly, what Republicans stood for was common sense. Solid borders, strong borders, restoring justice to our immigration system, cracking down on crime. And so that Americans feel safe and being strong, just generally having a projection of strength.
Denise, I've got both Brad and Mick here shaking their head no.
Well, I'll say first that I think when you saw the issues that Democrats stand for, paid leave, abortion access, they generally pass on the ballot last night in even the most Republican states. So there were voters that went out there and voted for what we consider Democratic policies and then voted against the Democratic Party. That tells me that that's a party brand issue. That tells me that people think the Democratic Party is not aligned with their values. And how do we fix that? We've got to deal with these cultural issues. We've got to talk to voters. We've got to bring more people into the party that don't have a college degree, that are from rural areas. And if we don't, we're going to keep making this mistake.
And it struck me that it wasn't the policies that hurt her. It was the fact they didn't know about her policies. Again, Democrats did well last night, down ballot. Democrats did okay in a bunch of the Senate races. Now, they lost Ohio, they lost Montana, they lost some of the races that we expected them to lose. But if you look at other states, they did okay. It's not the policies, I think, that was driving people away, with the possible exception of the culture. I think the DEI, men playing in boy and girl sports, that kind of stuff, that's a problem. Her problem, I think, was her. I don't think it was the Democrat brand last night. It's not a wholesale rejection of the Democrat brand. Otherwise, you'd see a red wave in the House, which you did not see. I think she did a lousy job of explaining to people who she was. And by the way, her leadership is to blame for that because they picked her so late to be the nominee.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. Also, don't forget to click that red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.